all welcome Mr. Angelo James Baldovizo. Hello, sir. Sir Angelo.
Hello,
Good
hello.
afternoon,
Good
sir.
afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Is my
Yes,
audio
yes.
clear? Hello. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon once again. So my name is James, and I work as a cyber senior consultant for SGV Technology Consulting, and I'm an Isaca member. So my role here for today as a speaker is to share with you another topic that contributes in achieving the best practice possible with building, running, or enhancing cybersecurity operations or a security operations center in the cloud. Aside from that, I would also want to share my personal SOC experience built from various interactions that I had from other organization, companies, and industries. So again, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me here.
You're welcome, Sir Angelo. And before we finally give you the floor, we would like to remind our audience to share our live stream using the official hashtags, and this time including hashtag Isaca Manila chapter. And this will be our official hashtags for this topic. Make sure to have it up or include that on your post. Winners will be announced after Mr. Angelo's presentation.
So we will now officially give you the floor, Mr. Angelo. So
All right, so let me present my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen. There you go. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So once again, good afternoon. My name is James. I'm from the cyber security under SGV Technology Consulting. Um, actually, it's a good transition since Lieutenant Junior John have shared his knowledge already about on building the Security Operations Center. So my slide would be probably on re-echoing on what John have shared earlier and try to add items on what he discussed. So to start with, he defined that security operations center is a command center, right? So it's just typically a room. So it's just a room or a command center facility for cybersecurity professionals who monitors, analyze, and protect an organization from any cybersecurity attack. And security operations as well responds to alerts generated by the various security monitoring tools. This includes intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems, raw data from firewalls, router, um, databases, and even behavioral analytics to identify the potential information security incidents, just like security attacks and anomalous activities. But I'd like also to emphasize this that um, yes, SOC is a room. It's just a command center. But who are the persons working inside that room? So let me try to define each and every roles and responsibilities of these individuals. So the roles of SOC personnel typically break into different tiers or level according to their involvement in an incident's timeline and severity. So the common roles and responsibilities for a SOC team are first we have our level one analyst or our security analyst. So they are responsible for monitoring the vulnerabilities, security incidents, or security alerts rather, performing triaging and escalating those security incidents that warrant it. And next to that is we have our senior analyst or our level two support. So level 2 support are in charge of investigating and responding to incidents, then performing response and recovery process to remediate an incident impact. And then there are cases wherein some organization include the CSIRT or the incident response team within this level, and then the other organization actually sometimes it is outside the level two. So they have a different department or different team called incident response team. And then the third one would be our threat hunters. So threat hunters, they are responsible for assessing IT security infrastructure according to the latest threat intelligence to determine unexpected or stealthy means of network entry. And then we also have our managers. So our SOC managers, they are responsible for overseeing the entire team and reporting the findings, action plans, and threat notifications to the organization's CISO. So basically, based on that roles and responsibilities, SOC has a two core responsibilities. One is investigating the suspicious activities, and the other one is maintaining the security monitoring tools. So let's try to define or expound more about investigating suspicious activities. So the SOC team should investigate suspicious and malicious activity within the networks and the organization's systems. So generally, the SIEM or analytics software will trigger an alert, and then the SOC will perform these following processes. So first, they perform alert triaging. So what is alert triaging? So basically, alert triaging is that the SOC collects and correlates the log data and provides tools that allow analysts to review the data and detect relevant security events. And then the other one is alert prioritization. So the analyst needs to leverage their knowledge of the business environment and then the threat landscape to prioritize the alerts and decide which security events represent the real security incidents, because not all not all security events can be considered as a security incident. And then the third one would be the remediation and recovery. So here, once the incident is discovered, our analysts are responsible for mitigating the threat, cleaning affected system, and recovering them from normal or recovering them to normal working condition. And lastly would be the post mortem and reporting. So this is important function of the SOC. This is for them to document the organization's response to an incident and then perform additional forensic analysis if it's needed to ensure that the threat that has been identified has been fully contained. And at the same time, they'll be able to learn from that incident to improve their processes. And then the other core responsibility of SOC is maintaining security monitoring tools. So the team must maintain and update their tools regularly. So without the correct tools, they cannot properly secure their systems and networks. So just like what John have mentioned earlier, right? There are multiple security tools out there. So it's the responsibility of the management to ensure that they update their system, because the cybersecurity attacks are evolving. So we cannot just rely on one security tools, or like for example, our firewall has been outdated. It's the traditional firewall. So the cybersecurity attacks can really bypass that firewall if we're still using, or if the organization still uses the traditional firewall. So to compensate that, we need to transform from traditional firewall to the next generation firewall in order for them to learn more about those latest attacks. So just like what Lieutenant John have iterated earlier, that the SOC is not just a single asset. Actually, it is a collection of people, processes, and technologies that work together to protect and defend the organization. So on the technological front, the digital backbone of the security center is comprised of numerous key components. So these are few examples. So actually, John have shared earlier some of the tools. So I'll be just providing a brief description about these technologies. So first is the SIEM, or the Security Information and Event Management. So this system actually aggregates and correlates the data from your network or from the organization's network, and then from the device security feeds. And then the other one is the digital assessment and monitoring systems. So this tool detects anomalous behavior or activity. So this is not just only the malware that have seen on your machine. It's more of your user interaction or user behavior. So if there's unusual logins to your computer or browsing, unusual browsing to a website, it will fire an alert to the SOC analyst for them to review if it's expected. Next one is prevention tools. So prevention tools, these are like antivirus or firewalls. So yeah, next is threat detection tools. So threat detection tools use artificial intelligence and machine learnings to recognize suspicious activity and escalated it within the SOC or the Security Operations Center. So what probably one example could be the endpoint detection and response or the EDR solution. Next is threat response capabilities. So that use of intelligent automation to automatically respond to low-level security threat and routine incidents. So some with this technology actually lessen the task of our analysts. So it's more of the automation in the process. So now we have a better understanding of what SOC is, and more significantly, who the individuals behind these operations are, as well as their respective roles and responsibilities, in order to keep the gears running. So now let's put security aside for a moment and talk about this game changer for the business as well as for the information technology, which is the cloud. But what is cloud, right? So actually, the word itself is strange to many of us, but in reality, all utilize it. We all utilize it on a regular basis through services such as online banking, social networking sites, and actually many more. But we don't realize that we are already using the cloud. So for me, I can describe the cloud as a delivery of various services through the mode of internet. And these resources are tools and applications. So, for example, data storage, servers, database, software, and networking. So, yeah, that's cloud for me is. But now let's try to identify or define the characteristics of cloud computing. So first, so first, we have the on-demand self-service. So on-demand self-service actually an organization or a businesses can order a service into the cloud 24 by 7 and it is immediately available. So users can always provision their resources and use them without human intervention from the service provider. Next one is broad network access. So resources are basically available over the network and can be accessed by diverse client platforms. Next is resource pooling. So this is aggregation of physical resources in a multi-tenant environment. So meaning there are multiple customers that can share same infrastructure and applications with security and privacy, as well as multiple customers are being serviced from the same physical resources. Next is rapid elasticity. So this is an additional capacity or additional capacity would be available as and when it is needed. So it automatically and quickly acquires and dispose resources. So it quickly and easily scale up or scale down based on the demand of the organization or of the users rather. Then next is we have measured service. So the consumption for cloud service is fully tracked and users are billed accordingly and automatically. So users basically pay correctly for what they have used in cloud. So actually there are three well-known deployment models for cloud computing. So we have public, private, and hybrid clouds. So to give you a background, a public cloud is owned by a cloud provider, but is made available to the public. So with public cloud, there are three famous cloud provider. We have Microsoft Azure, we have Google Cloud, and then Amazon Web Services. While a private cloud is typically owned by an organization, which also controls the access to the cloud. Then lastly, we have the hybrid cloud, or a combination of public and private clouds. Um, Now, let's take a look on each and every deployment models. So we have a public cloud. So in a public cloud, the cloud infrastructure is basically owned by a cloud provider, and it is accessible to the public over the internet. So the cloud provider hosts the cloud infrastructure, and end users can access it remotely without the need to buy and set up a working environment. So just like what John have mentioned earlier, right? When building SOC, or when using technologies, um, you need to consider the hardware, the appliances. But with cloud, you're no longer need to worry about those aspects, because it will be responsibility of the cloud service provider to provision those things for you. So basically, public cloud resources are shared among different end users. So it's basically a huge data center wherein all public cloud customers' data are stored in there. So in can you just you can just imagine, let's say, one rack of servers. There are multiple datas there, data that in there that's being managed by multiple organizations. So so public cloud users are typically charged for the duration for which their services are used. So however, public cloud charge models vary across different providers. And additionally, the security and terms of use are defined by their providers, or the cloud service providing provider, meaning end users must work within the constraints of the provider when using their services. Next is private cloud. So in this second type of cloud, the cloud infrastructure is basically owned by the organization itself. The infrastructure is accessible to specific users via the organization's intranet. So meaning they just own it. You, other organization or other businesses cannot access their data, or they cannot share rather their infrastructure or their resources to other organization. So the cloud environment for private cloud needs to be procured, set up, operated, and maintained by the organization itself. So the private cloud resources are typically shared within the organization. So public cloud is shared with multiple organizations, while private cloud is typically shared within the organization. So unlike the public cloud, security and terms of use for a private cloud are defined by the organization, since they are the only one who uses the resources. So the entire infrastructure is located within the organization perimeter, and then their security can be compliant with the organization's policies. So the third one is hybrid cloud. So hybrid cloud, their infrastructure includes an owned private cloud and a leased public cloud. So basically, it's a combination of both. So hybrid clouds enable the idea of cloud bursting. So meaning an organization uses its private cloud for most of its needs and dynamically provision resources in the public cloud when utilization exceeds the capacity of its private cloud. And then there are actually other types of clouds continue to emerge. So for example, we have the community cloud. So this share infrastructure among different organizations that have common security or other concerns. And then another type is distributed cloud. So which provides cloud computing using a set of distributed machines located at a different geographical locations. So now we have defined what is cloud and we're able to identify its characteristics as well as the different cloud deployment models. So now let me introduce to you the three main cloud computing models. We have IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So each representing a different part of cloud computing stacks, which will be discussed in the following slides. So first, we have IaaS or infrastructure as a service. So IaaS basically contains um, the basic building blocks for cloud environment and typically provide access to networking features, computers, and data storage space. So infrastructure as a service basically provides organization or businesses with the highest level of flexibility and management control over their IT resources. And in most cases, um, it is somehow similar to their existing IT resources that many IT departments and developers are kind of familiar today. So this cloud service model actually offers a lot of flexibility to organizations because they just purchase computing resources on demand instead of buying their own hardware. So you can imagine, let's say you establish a business wherein you build your own hardware, you have to maintain it. But with this platform, um, or with this technology, you don't need to worry about setting up the hardware on your own. You can just purchase it on the internet via cloud, which is the infrastructure as a service. So this way, companies increase efficiency, scalability, redundancy, and security while keeping control of their infrastructure. And moreover, by outsourcing their infrastructure, they also delegate its setup, management, and maintenance. So in return, they can save a lot of money, time, and efforts. Next is the PaaS or the platform as a service. So it's a cloud-based platform for developing, running, managing applications. So earlier, it's the infrastructure. So now we go to the platform. So the cloud service provider basically hosts, manage, and maintains all the hardware and software included in the platform because in infrastructure, they only focuses on the hardware. For PaaS or for the platform as a service, it manages hardware and softwares. So so included in the platform would be their servers, their operating systems, storage, and as well as related services for security, operating system, and software upgrades, backups, and actually even more. There's a lot of components within the platform as a service. So PaaS actually remove the need for the organization or businesses to manage the underlying infrastructure, usually the hardware and operating systems, and allow them to focus on the deployment and management of their application. So this helped them to be more efficient as they don't need to worry about their resource procurement, capacity planning, maintaining the software, or even performing the patching of the hardware and hardware and then the operating system, because those are responsibilities of the cloud service providers. So basically, the users can able to access PaaS through a GUI interface or graphical user interface. So imagine that you don't need to go to the data center or to open a firewall port for you to access it. So you just need to open up a browser, then access your application from there, and you can collaborate across all your organization. So example of PaaS solution includes actually AWS Elastic Beanstalk, Google App Engine, Microsoft Windows Azure, and then Red Hat OpenShift on the IBM Cloud. And the third one is SaaS, or Software as a Service. So SaaS provides us with a complete product that is run and managed by the cloud service provider. So actually, in most cases, people refers to SaaS as an applications. So with SaaS offering, you do not have to think about how the service is being maintained or how the underlying infrastructure is being managed. You only need to think about how you will use that particular piece of software. So a common example of SaaS mm, would be web-based email, where you can send and receive email without having to manage its features to the email product or maintaining the servers of the email gateway. So that particular task is responsibility of the cloud service provider. So all you just have to do is to use the the application. So yeah, so that's the cloud, an introduction to the cloud. So let's recall what we've discussed at the beginning. Actually, even with what um, Lieutenant John have shared, right? More about the security. So security is very rampant nowadays, and there are lots and it's now sophisticated, getting more sophisticated, and more are being victimized about cybersecurity or ransomware in to be specific. So and now in this day and age, COVID-19 pandemic really prompted a pressing need for the organization or businesses to give their employees the chance to work remotely. Actually, including me. I've been working remotely since February 2020. So it's almost 2 years na I am working remotely. So this driving an increasing number of businesses to utilize cloud technologies. However, this also exposed them, including me, to cyber attacks on business infrastructure and the users, just like employee users. So integrating a cloud infrastructure with a company's IT infrastructure is always a collaborative effort between the IT staff and then the cloud service provider. Because of this pandemic, the traditional cloud security approach have become obsolete, and various new security problems have emerged, which IT and the product management must be aware of. So basically, cloud security um, consists of a set of policies, controls, procedures, and technologies that work together to protect cloud-based systems, data, and infrastructure. These security measures are configured to protect cloud data, support regulatory compliance, and at the same time, they have to protect their customers' privacy as well as setting authentication rules for each and every individual users and devices. So from authenticating access up until filtering the traffic, cloud security can be configured to the exact needs of the business. And because of these rules, can be configured and managed in one place, So administration overheads are reduced and IT teams are empowered to focus on other areas of the businesses. But remember, the way cloud security is delivered or the way cloud security is delivered will always depend on the individual cloud provider or the cloud security solutions in place. And then the implementation of cloud security processes should be a joint responsibility between the business owner and then the solutions provider. So here are some common cloud security challenges and risks. So first is the data breaches. So today, data breaches are the number one issue for businesses. Actually, according to IBM and Ponemon Institute, the average cost of a data breach jumped from 3.86 million US dollar to 4.24 million US dollar between 2020 and 2021. So this is the highest average cost that they've seen in the past 17 years. Data breaches in the cloud actually different from the on-premise attacks. So with cloud, malware is less important for the attackers. Instead, attackers take advantage of misconfigurations, insufficient access, stolen credentials, and other vulnerabilities. Next one is visibility. So to address various business and operational demands, 76% of the organization actually use two or more cloud providers. This will result in a lack of insights into the whole cloud environment since they have multiple providers. And with that, this result in decentralized controls and management, which causes them blind spot. So blind spots are the endpoints, workloads, and traffic that are not adequately monitored by the security operations team. And frequently, these security gaps can be exploited by the attackers. Next would be the dynamic workload. So a dynamic workload is made up of all the processes and resources that are used to support an application. So in other words, um, this is an application composed of numerous workloads such as virtual machines, containers, serverless functions, databases, etc. So the workload consists of the application, the data generated or entered into that application. So um, failure to effectively protect each those workload not only make the application and organization vulnerable to breaches, but also causes the application development to be delayed, production and performance will suffer, and then the business speed will kind of slow. Next is misconfiguration. So moving quickly expose application to misconfigurations. This could be because of the pandemic. Most of the businesses tried to what do you call this makisabay to the latest trend with, for them to continue their businesses, which um, most of the common vulnerability in cloud environment is the misconfiguration because they wasn't able to properly configure their configuration to the cloud. So misconfiguration merely results in overly permissive account privileges, insufficient logging, and other security gaps, which expose organizations or businesses to data breaches, cloud breaches, insider threats, and adversaries that exploit vulnerabilities to get access to their data and to their network. Next is the unsecured APIs. So an API, in essence, it enables the applications or components of applications to connect with one another through the internet or a private network. In other words, APIs are used by organizations to link their services and transfer the data either internally or to their partners, suppliers, customers, and other third parties. So APIs that have been exposed, broken, or hacked are responsible for massive data breaches, and disclose financial it will disclose financial, customer, and medical sensitive information. And because of APIs, actually because APIs actually transform the specific types of data into the endpoint. So a change in policy or permission on that API will increase the risk of unwanted access to the data than the host is intended to. The next is access. Sorry. Next is the access control and unauthorized access. So companies frequently provide employees more access and permission than are required to accomplish their job functions. This actually practice increases the risk of identity-based threats. Access policies that have been incorrectly configured are common problems which go actually undetected by the security auditors. Furthermore, organizations that use multi-cloud environments sometimes rely on the default access controls of their cloud providers, which can be problematic in multi-cloud or hybrid cloud setup, because insider threats can do significant damage due to their privileged access, knowledge of where to strike, and ability to cover their tracks. Lastly would be the security compliance and auditing. So cloud compliance and governance are complex, and so are the industry, international, federal, state, and even the local regulations. Part of the issue is that the cloud compliance exists on numerous levels, none of which are being managed by the same parties. So shadow IT, or the usage of software, devices, or applications that are not explicitly approved, makes the cloud compliance even more difficult. So to address these challenges that I've shared, organization needs a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy designed around vulnerabilities specific to the cloud. That is why cloud security is important. So cloud security is a paramount for businesses making the journey to the cloud. Security threats are always evolving and becoming more and more and more sophisticated. And at the same time, cloud computing is no less vulnerable than an on-premise infrastructure. So as a result, it is critical to engage with a cloud provider that provides best security that has been tailored to your infrastructure. I've also listed down here some of the best practices in cloud security. First is the centralized security. So cloud security is actually similar to on how cloud computing centralized their applications and data. So when dealing with shadow IT or BYOD, or bring your own device, cloud-based business networks actually contains a numerous amount of devices and endpoint that might be challenging for them to manage. So to centrally managing these entities will improve the traffic analysis and web filtering, and at the same time, it will streamline the network event monitoring and results in fewer software and policy upgrade. So with this one, we need the organization needs to have visibility with all of their applications, machines, softwares that are being utilized within the organization. Next is that cloud security helps us to, or helps the businesses to reduce costs. So one benefit of using cloud storage and security is that it eliminates the need to invest in specialized hardware, since you don't have hardware at all. The appliances are being managed by the cloud service provider. So this minimize not only the capital expense but also the administrative overhead. So imagine that instead of you having a dedicated resource or employee to manage your infrastructure, you can delegate these people or these analysts to another work stream wherein he can be um, leveraged. And at the same time, cloud security sometimes provides proactive security capabilities that provide actually protection 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with little or no human intervention. So as long as you configure your tools properly. The next one is it reduced administration. So as I've mentioned earlier, as part of the costing, right? When you choose a reliable cloud service provider or cloud security platform, you can actually say goodbye to manual security configurations and practically the continual security updates. Because when you purchase a hardware, you don't just not put it in there. You need to manage it every now and then. You need to ensure that the OS is updated, security patch has been installed. So these activities can actually consume a lot of resources. But when you shift them to the cloud, all security administration happens in one location and it is being fully managed on your behalf. Lastly would be the reliability. So cloud computing services provide the highest level of dependability. Users can access their data and applications into the cloud no matter where they are or what devices they are using if the proper cloud security mechanisms are in place. So more and more organizations actually are realizing that many businesses benefits of moving their systems into the cloud. And cloud computing actually allows organizations or businesses to operate at scales. It reduces the technology costs and use agile systems that that gives them the competitive edge. However, it is also essential that the organization have complete confidence in their cloud computing security, and since all of their data and applications are stored in there. So they need to ensure that it is being protected from data theft, data leakage, or even the corruption and deletion of their data. So always remember that all cloud models are still vulnerable to the threats. That is why majority of organizations are somehow hesitant to move their critical system. So they kind of choose the hybrid model wherein they can still store the critical systems to their premise. And at the same time, it is crucial that the proper security measures be in place regardless of whether you are operating in a native cloud or hybrid or on-premise environment. Cloud security will provide all of the capabilities of the traditional IT security. It will also allow businesses to take use of many benefits of cloud computing while being safe and ensuring that their data privacy and compliance requirements are satisfied. So here on the right hand side of the presentation, I've also listed down some of the best practices in cloud security. So first is the strategy and policy. So a comprehensive cloud security program should account for cloud security risk, ownership, and accountability, both internal or external. Gaps in protection or compliance and controls required to mature the security and achieve the desired end state. Then we also have the network segmentation. So in a multi-tenant environment, consider the segmentation that exists between your resources and those of other customers, as well as between your own instance. When possible, use a zone method to isolate your instances, containers, application, and then the entire system from one another. Another best practice would be the IAM, or the Identity Access Management, and PAM, or Privilege Access Management. So this ensures that only authorized users have access to the cloud environment, and at the same time with your applications and the data, by leveraging those strong identity management and authentication methods. Such as 2FA, right? Because there are times that your password can be, if you did not set your password, um, not correctly, but strong enough to for them to guess, for the attackers to guess it, then they can get into your account. So it is recommended to have a 2FA, just like an OTP or your fingerprints, for you to somehow ensure that no one will be able to bypass the authentication. And at the same time, we need to enforce the least privilege to limit the access and harden the cloud resources. So for example, only expose resources to the internet as needed, and then you need to deactivate unnecessary capabilities, features of your access. And at the same time, we must determine that privileges are role based, and that privilege access is audited and logged using a session monitoring. Next is discover and onboard cloud instance and assets. So once your cloud instance, services and assets are discovered, bring them under your management. So basically, managing those instances, creating a cycling password, setting a password policy configuration, and you need to set the discovery and onboarding should be automated as much as possible to eliminate shadow IT. Next is password control, or for privileged and non-privileged passwords. So never authorize the usage of shared password, because there are cases wherein um, a powerful account is being used by multiple users, and there are times that they just list it down on a piece of paper and then pass it on to another users for them to use. So it's really a no. So passwords should be used in conjunction with other authentication techniques in critical locations, and ensure that the best practices for password management are being followed. So just like what I've mentioned earlier, there should be a 2FA, or at least a periodic password. You need to enforce password change, so periodically, so the users will change their password and in a certain period of time. Next is vulnerability management. So you need to perform vulnerability scanning and security audits on a regular basis, and then patch them, and patch the known vulnerabilities. Then next is encryption. So encryption basically ensures that your cloud data is encrypted while it at rest, or even in transit. So it needs to be encrypted. Um, Next is disaster recovery. So be aware of the data backup retention and recovery policies and processes of your cloud service provider. So you need to ensure that they meet your internal standards. At the same time, um, ensure that you have the break glass strategies and solutions in place. Next is monitoring, alerting, and reporting. So continuous security and user activity monitoring should be implemented across all environments and instances. So it, it, it integrates and centralizes data from your cloud provider, if available, with data from your in-house and external vendor solutions to get a complete view of what is going on in your environment. So this is where the SOC comes in. Um, just like with other security disciplines, security operations are being transformed as well by evolving business models, attackers, and technology platforms. And the following trends are driving the change of the security operations. So one is the cloud platform coverage. So security operations must detect and respond to attacks across the enterprise state, including the cloud resources. Cloud resources are new and rapidly evolving platforms. So that is oftentimes unfamiliar to the SecOps professionals. And second is to shift to identify centric security. The traditional SecOps or SOC actually relies heavily on network-based tools such as firewalls, IPS, IDS, but now we must integrate identity, endpoint application, and other tools and skills. This integration is because attackers have already incorporated identity attacks like phishing, credential theft, password spray, and other attack types into their arsenal that reliably evade network-based detections. Another thing is that assets of value, like bring your own devices, spend some or all of their life cycle outside your network perimeter that limits the utility of network detections. The third one is the IoT and OT coverage. So adversaries actively targeting IoT and OT devices as part of their attack chains. Targets might be ultimate these targets might be the ultimate purpose of an attack or a means to access or traverse to your environment. And lastly is cloud processing of telemetry. So security operations modernizations is required because of the massive increase in relevant telemetry that comes from the cloud. This is difficult or impossible to process with on-premise resources and classic techniques. So it drives the security operations to really embrace the cloud service that provide massive scales analytics. In, at the same time, machine learning and even the behavior analytics. These technologies will help rapidly extract the value to meet the time sensitive for the security operations. So our key takeaway for this session actually is that SOC is not just a single asset. It is a collection of the right people, processes, and technologies that work together to address the organization needs. But one thing that I want to highlight with you is that people are a SOC most valuable assets, and they need to be knowledgeable and well equipped to apply their expertise, judgment, and to have a creative thinking. And with that, I'd like to introduce some of the Isaca certifications that can enable young professionals and students like you to start building your careers into cloud security. So these certifications are adaptable and can be obtained in any order or combination based on your goal. So actually on the left side, the one that's in violet, these are ITCA fundamentals, while on the lower right hand side are the CET. So you may wonder how the CET differs from ITCA credential. So basically, ITCA requires little to no knowledge of concepts or skills, and it covers fundamental knowledge of the topic areas, while the CET is focusing on the emerging technologies within the IT environment. So, basic understanding of IT knowledge and concept is really recommended. And then we also have some advanced certifications here. So we have the CSAC, or the Certificate of Cloud Auditing Knowledge. And then we have C series here. So we have CISA, CISM, um, CTPSE, CRIST, and CSXP. So yeah, in order for you, if you are really interested to join um, SOC and SOC and cloud security, I highly recommend to take these fundamentals for you to at least start your journey into cybersecurity. So find us on social media. Go to Isaca website and connect with your peers on Engage. And join the conversation on social media, volunteer, engage with your colleagues, and visit our websites to access
Just a moment.
So we have here two questions for you, addressed for you, Mr. James. So first is,
First question from Glenn Gali. Paano mako-convince ang organization sa pag-establish ng SOC if needed na talaga?
actually as what to prepare a report wherein these are the security alerts or events that we are seeing in our environment, and then what are the implications of those security events or security incidents if we will not be detecting it or mitigating it right away. So yeah.
All right, thank you so much for that. Once again, Mr. James, for the wonderful answer. And I think we actually have a second question from them, Ronan Banate. Um,
so
question is, go ahead, Miss First.
yes, this is somehow related to the first question, sir. So acquiring of security tools and building SOC is very expensive indeed. So what are the things that needs to be considered to protect the organization without depending on SOC?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part of the question?
Okay, sir. What are the things that needs to be considered to protect the organization without depending into SOC?
Okay. So actually, that's true. Actually, yung technologies or tools are really expensive. But um, the important thing here is that we need to have a proper policy and procedure in place, because number one entry point of our attacker are its people, the employee of the organization. So if you get victimized by phishing, you'll be targeted already. The attackers can go inside to your network. So if the business or organization doesn't have that much enough fund to invest on their tools or technologies, they must enforce policies and procedures and awareness to their employees. So not just only limited to IT, but to the whole organization itself. They need to conduct security awareness. They need to train their people about those and don'ts.